My boss saw me at the bar and whispered, "Tonight's on me. Take me home." The night cracked open the moment I realized she was watching me. Not the polite, passing glance of a superior acknowledging an employee in public, but the steady, unguarded look of someone who had finally stopped pretending. The bar's amber lights smeared across the mirrors, the bass thumped low like a second heartbeat, and there I was tired, bruised by a week that had wrung me dry, when the one person who knew every version of me at my most controlled and most invisible stepped into my life without warning. In that instant, the world felt both dangerous and alive, as if one wrong breath could shatter everything I had built, and one brave step could change my life forever. If stories about unexpected moments and complicated hearts pull you in, pause here for a second like the video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who loves emotional storytelling, and subscribe to the channel Stories Beyond the Porch, so you never miss a story that lingers long after the screen goes dark. I had come to the bar to disappear, the kind of place where no one asks what you do for a living, where your name dissolves into music and ice clinking in glasses. My job had become a maze of late nights and quiet sacrifices, a ladder climbed rung by careful rung, while I learned how to swallow frustration and call it professionalism. I was good at it, too good at being invisible when I needed to be, good at delivering results without asking for applause. That night, though, the armor felt heavy. I wanted to sit in the corner and let the noise erase me, to remember who I was before deadlines defined my worth. Then she walked in, my boss, framed by the doorway like a scene cut from a film I never thought I'd star in. She didn't belong there in the way she belonged everywhere else. At work, she was precision and calm, a force that shaped rooms simply by entering them. At the bar, she looked human, almost fragile in the low light, as if the city had peeled back her layers and left the woman beneath. When her gaze found mine, something unspoken passed between us, recognition, relief, and a risk neither of us had named out loud. It wasn't about desire alone. It was about being seen when you've spent years perfecting the art of hiding. I remember the way the night slowed after that. The music softened, the crowd blurred. I felt the weight of every rule I had learned press against my ribs, each one whispering warnings about boundaries and consequences. We lived on opposite sides of an invisible line drawn by titles and expectations, and stepping across it felt reckless. But so did staying exactly where I was, pretending that the pull between us hadn't been building in stolen glances during late meetings, in the shared silence of elevators, in the way our conversations always lasted a second too long. She moved closer without fanfare, and the air between us warmed. The words she offered were quiet and certain, not a command but an invitation, a recognition that tonight could be different if I let it. The challenge wasn't temptation, it was courage. I had spent my career making safe choices, choosing stability over honesty, progress over passion. Saying yes meant admitting that I wanted more than a title and a paycheck. It meant acknowledging a loneliness I had buried under productivity. As the night unfolded, we didn't rush. There was a gentleness to it, a shared understanding that whatever this was deserved care. We talked without talking, letting presence do the heavy lifting. I noticed how she listened with her whole body, how the world seemed to quiet around her when she focused. She noticed the parts of me that never made it into performance reviews, the humor, the doubt, the tenderness I guarded like a secret. In that space, I wasn't an employee, and she wasn't a boss. We were two people standing at the edge of something that felt both terrifying and true. The walk out into the cool air felt like crossing a threshold. The city hummed around us, indifferent and alive, while my thoughts raced ahead to consequences I couldn't predict. I worried about what would happen when daylight returned, when the structure of our lives demanded answers. I worried about what it would mean if this was a mistake. But beneath the fear was a quiet hope I hadn't allowed myself in years. The hope that choosing honesty might not ruin me, that vulnerability could be a strength instead of a liability. Being together that night wasn't about escape. It was about recognition, about two lives that had been running parallel finally acknowledging the space between them. We moved carefully, with respect, with a tenderness that came from knowing how much there was to lose. I felt seen in a way that steadied me, like finding solid ground after drifting too long at sea. In the hush of that shared moment, I realized how starved I had been for connection that didn't require performance. Morning arrived softly, without judgment. Light filtered in and revealed the ordinary beauty of the world we would return to. The emails, the meetings, the expectations. We faced it together, not with promises but with honesty. The hardest part wasn't what had happened. It was deciding how to carry it forward with integrity. We talked about boundaries and respect, about the importance of choice and consent, about the courage it takes to align your private truth with your public life. Nothing was solved in a single sunrise, but something essential had shifted. Work changed after that, not in the dramatic ways people imagine, but in subtle, meaningful ones. I spoke up more. I asked for what I needed. I stopped shrinking myself to fit spaces that were too small. She led with even greater clarity, creating room for humanity without sacrificing excellence. Whatever path we chose it with open eyes, aware that real connection demands accountability as much as it offers comfort. What stayed with me wasn't the thrill of the unexpected night. It was the lesson it carved into me. That life doesn't always announce its turning points with fireworks. Sometimes it's a look across a crowded room, a quiet invitation to be brave, a decision to step out of the shadows and claim your own story. Love, in its truest form, isn't about crossing lines for the sake of excitement. It's about redrawing them together with care, honesty, and respect. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a moment when courage changed your direction, please take a second now to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Stories Beyond the Porch so we can keep bringing you stories that speak to the heart. And before we end, I have one special request. Comment the line or moment that stayed with you the most and tell us why. Your words keep these stories alive, long after the night fades into morning.